All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is So I Did a Thing Live, and I say it every week, but I'm pretty stoked about this guest. I really don't know him that well. I've read some of his posts. We've kind of interacted with each other on, engaged and stuff like that. Um, but the first time I talked to him was 5 minutes ago when we met backstage. So I'm really excited to get to know him a little bit better. We've already had a great conversation. So I'm going to bring Jake out. What's going
Hey,
on, man?
hey, Chris, what an intro. My gosh. I'm sure you get that weekly.
Yeah. So real quick, I'm going to give a shout out to my nephew. My nephew is watching me on YouTube right now. He thought it was really cool that his uncle was on YouTube. So I'm going to say hi to my nephew, Connor. What's up, Connor? I'm glad you're watching, man. Holly joined us. Loopy is here. She's a LinkedIn user. So yeah. So cool, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing
Awesome.
very well. How
Thank
about
you for being
yourself?
here. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jenna Stanton recommended you very highly, and I think that's the first time we ever really interacted. We weren't even connected, but I think you were there. I think you were in the comments on when she was on
I
my live.
was.
Yeah,
I was. It was an accidental. I saw
right.
that she had posted, she has her hashtag Jenna Speaks, and
Yep,
I didn't even
yep.
know that that was a thing to kind of like provide your own hashtag, put
Mm-hmm.
like a conglomerate of all of your things in there. And I was like, whoa. And then
Yeah.
I'm listening to it, my wife and I, and she's, on Instagram, and I'm looking on here, trying to get more familiar with LinkedIn. And I'm watching it, and I hear her start to describe me, and I'm like, what? I was like, this is how professional strangers meet.
Right.
Yeah. So that
That
was that was fantastic. And I saw her just sounding out my last name. You almost got it right, Jenna. It's Counts. Counts is how you pronounce my last
counts.
name. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was fantastic. And then I heard you say, "Oh yeah, like I'll reach out to them." And you did. You DM'd
Yeah.
me and said, "Hey, you want to do a show?"
Yeah.
That's how it worked.
Also, that's the way it works, man. That's what I love about this place. Is just boom, like that, a connection was made, and we were scheduled within a couple of days, and here we are now.
Yeah. Here we are.
Yeah. So, for those of you, if you don't know Jake, I'm going to let him talk a little bit more here in just a second. He's a therapist. He posts a lot of really insightful stuff on LinkedIn, and it's not like the normal boring kind of stuff. I can actually read it, and sometimes, man, just the way my attention span works. I'm not ADHD or anything, but just the way, sometimes I'm just not in the mood to read really insightful stuff. But your stuff always grabs me, especially the stuff you do on like gratitude. What are you thankful
Mm.
for today? Just kind of make you stop and think. I don't always comment on them because sometimes I'm just scrolling and don't have time to really engage. But it always makes you think. Okay, what am I grateful for today?
Mm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I appreciate you talking about that.
Hi, Rita. Thanks for coming by. So yeah, tell us. Just kind of give us the spiel, man.
Yeah. So I've been a clinical therapist in mental health for just a few years. A few
Mm-hmm.
meaning two and a half,
Okay.
and fresh out of college, 2.5 years ago. And I became a therapist originally because I think I was on some sort of ego trip, to be
Okay.
honest. Yeah.
Well,
I
nothing
was
like being brutally honest with yourself, man. Right?
That's what I do for my day to day.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um yeah, I was meandering in college for a long time. I started school '09
Okay.
for college, and I had just finished high school. So, but at the time, I didn't really necessarily know what to do. Didn't know
Mm-hmm.
college was even a thing. Thought you leave high
Mm-hmm.
school and then you get a 401k somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, that was my
Right.
mind.
Yeah.
Went to schools that didn't necessarily uh, help introduce me to the world outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't necessarily prepared. Went to a local community college and failed all the assessments. It just
Mm-hmm.
reminded me of what I couldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
Never really read books until I started university a few years later. But yeah, it took me 6 years to get my first 2-year degree.
Oh wow.
Yeah, failed my first few psychology classes. the capital F. Showed up to the final, and I said, nope, left to go get lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a different mindset, different person.
Yeah, man.
Trying to find work after economy collapsed
Yeah.
in 09, and
Yeah.
nothing was happening. And I was doing a lot of volunteership for a while at churches. And one day someone hit me up and said, hey, I hear you're looking for work, and my friend sees you sweeping at the church sometimes, so why don't you work here? And I said, where? And they said, at the community college you go to. I said, really? Okay. So I got hired to work in a counseling center, but it was for education. So they help students who are meandering like me get on point.
Right.
And so I just worked there, and I felt as if one person had a belief in me, I could at least give myself a shot too. That's where I felt motivated. And then from there, graduated, and then went right to university. And they said, you got 2 more years, and finished it in a year, got my bachelor's. And then I said, where am I going to go now? And I saw a Facebook post, kind of like how we got connected.
Yeah.
Facebook post by a colleague of mine, and who said, one day I'm going to do private practice. I'm like, what's that? Don't know what that is. Said, why is it private? That's weird. And I looked into it, and I emailed her, and I said, what is this? And she says, oh, I'm trained to be a therapist. And I was like talk therapy? Like, you sit down and lay down and talk about your feelings and stuff? And they're like, yeah. And I had a lot of jokes.
Is that really a real thing? I'm sure that's what you were thinking, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, I can give advice to people. A lot of my friends shared with me, you're like the Dr. Phil of my life, Jake. And I'm like, that's weird, but I'll take it.
Right.
And so while I was getting my bachelor's, I made the decision to attempt to go into grad school. First one in my family to go to college, first one to attempt to go to grad school. But let me pause for a moment, because I didn't have the financial resources to even attempt to think to go in that direction.
Right.
Like, again, I'm coming from the mindset of, once I leave high school, I go work at McDonald's to get my 401k. That was my mindset, legitimately. And so for those few years I was working at my junior college counseling center, people are watching. Yeah. And I didn't really realize that it's not necessarily who you know, but it's how you treat them. Yeah. That's what they remember, I think. Yes. More so than just knowing of them. And in that, I remember there was this woman, her name was Deborah. She was a counselor at my college, and she pulled me into her office one day and said, hey, I heard you can't afford school. I'm like, who's spreading that? I'm like, it's true. Right. But who's sharing my information? Right. And she said, well, I want to help you. And she worked with an organization that, she worked for an organization that, I don't know if it's like angel investing or some sort of thing, but she had signed off paperwork to help pay for my bachelor's degree, and then pay for my tuition, and then my books. Wow. And then she says, you want to get a master's, right? I'm like, what's that? And she says, it's when you do this, this, this. I said, sure. She said, okay, we'll help cover that too. Like, wow. I said, like, cover it? She's like, yeah, 100%. And I just was crying. Yeah, man. Thinking Jesus. I was like, yeah. It was like, we've had 2 or 3 conversations, and she's like, but I've been watching your work in our office here for the past 2 years, Jake. So after that, she and her organization just made it possible. I mean, she retired literally after signing the paperwork. She retired and moved to Alaska, and it was mind blowing. You know, that is just proof where the Bible says, be faithful in the little things. Ooh, they just add up. And be faithful in the little things, and the big things are going to come. Oh my gosh, yeah. And so knowing that I was going to be privately funded made it a lot easier to decide how serious to take this route. Because I was comfortable in doing other things, but I don't think I was ever really good at it. Even at school, I was struggling. But once she and that supervisor that hired me believed in me, others had believed in me too. I think I was just blind to it. Right. And after that, things just started speeding up. And then I got into grad school. And the first day of grad school, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give some advice to people.
Right, because
Get
you have
trained.
all the answers.
Get trained. Yeah. Oh my gosh. The ego was, I could barely even fit through the doors.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so I remember the first day, professor says, all right, rule number 1, therapists don't give advice.
Busted your bubble right then.
Immediately day 1. And then for the next 6 months, I was struggling. I'm like, do I even want to do this?
Mm-hmm.
It was an internal struggle. And then I started finding out the magic behind therapy, which is, at least from what I can tell, a lot of individuals have particular decent answers for themselves somewhere within themselves. And it's my job to help find their way there, or pry it out, or help inspire or motivate them towards it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Part of my parole stipulations is I've got to go to group therapy once a month. And that's exactly what she does. She doesn't, she will give advice, but now that you've said that, it makes me think that's exactly what she does, is she finds what's already there and then helps you find it and pull it out.
Yeah.
That's a very good way to look at it.
Yeah. A lot of my colleagues and I have conversations about this, because there are therapists, including me, who attempted to solve clients' problems for them, which is dangerous. And we can discuss that later, but it can burn any professional out if you come in and think, I'm going to help them solve this, but I'm going to try to take the reins. And what that does is it looks kind and helpful from the outside.
Right.
But zooming in on it on the inside, a lot of my clients have had individuals do things for them most of their life, and even sometimes without their permission, such as taking advantage of them.
Yeah.
And if I were to attempt to say, hey, this problem, I'm going to take it and manipulate in a way that's going to be better for you, I'm doing just the same thing, just wearing a different disguise.
Right.
It's a very deep level thing to look into when I point this out to clients. And so I always have to remind myself that therapy, and I talk about this with my supervisor, is like a chessboard. I know my pieces and they know theirs, but I'm never going to move their pieces for them.
Right.
Yeah. There's only a few rare circumstances that I will provide direct, unsolicited advice, and that's for like something as tedious as danger to self or others.
Right.
But when it comes to their everyday life, who am I to think that I can make big decisions for them when I haven't walked a day in theirs? I'm just getting a glimpse. Yeah.
That's a good way to look at it, man. I've never even thought about it that way, because kind of like you just have this envision of what TV shows you as therapy, where you lay on the couch and the therapist says, well, how does that make you feel? You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
And going back to, before we get too much further into this, I want to touch on something you said a few minutes ago about, getting out of school, go get your 401k, kind of just meandering through college. Is just a prime example why, and this is just my opinion, you shouldn't pressure a high school student to pick a major while they're in high school, or force them to go to college right out of high school. In my opinion, that you're just a good example of that, is that you may not even know what you want to do.
That's what happened.
And you didn't know
you're hitting it on the head, Chris. You are.
Yeah, you didn't know what you wanted to do till you got older. And then it clicked.
Yeah.
But God had you in the right place at the right time and was showing you things. You know what I mean?
Sure did. A lot of doors open and close, and falling through trap doors, and it was. There's a lot of different things. Yeah, there's a lot of individuals, and that goes into what I was stating earlier, and you connected it really good in a segue way, which is, it's if you attempt to push someone in a direction that they're not certain about, what does that say about me as the pusher?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and the intention is good. Like when I say I always like ego tripping, but my intention was I want to help individuals. But gosh, it's so much more powerful when someone says, Jake, I don't think that'll work for me. This works better. I'm like, oh, I could have just helped you figure that out a long time ago, and that would have made my life
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
And like, you know, the cards you're playing with. I
Mm.
don't, but if you show me a little, maybe I can help clinically guide you while you take the leads. And that's what therapy is not me doing it for you. It's me standing beside you and looking over your shoulder and saying, hey, remember that time you fell in that pothole? Here it comes again. Let's list out some warning signs. You know what to
Mhm.
do, but I'd wonder if we were to point out these pros and cons, you'd be able to go over that obstacle this time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Holly says she was supposed to be a nurse or bailed in year 2 and switched to business. It's hard. Yeah, exactly. How the heck are you going to expect a 17, 18-year-old kid to know what they want to be when they grow up?
Yeah, Holly, you make a great. That's a great example. You are put in a. I changed my degree at least 6 times. So history to psychology to public speaking to business, back to history, back to psychology, and so yeah, you're exposed to all these nuances, the good and the bad,
Mm-hmm.
and they push us into directions of where we'd like to be that at least aligns with what our values and beliefs are one day. So I
Yeah.
hear you when you transition from one major to another. It's honestly a part of that journey to get to where you think you'll be doing what you feel you should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
because you'll know.
Yeah, you'll know.
You'll
When it
know.
hits, you'll know.
Whew.
Kenny joined us. Kenny, I didn't get a notification either, and I hit the remind me button, so I don't know what happened on this one.
Uh-oh.
It's not my fault, bro. It's LinkedIn's fault.
Savor that flavor.
Savor the flavor, man. Do you know Kenny?
You know, I had the honor to just hear his passionate spirit through when you were talking with Jenna.
Yeah. Oh my
And
gosh,
all I
dude.
saw was savor the flavor throughout the whole
Savor the
thing.
flavor. Yeah, he is
Yeah.
amazing. This is Loopy. She said community college is a great place to start to experiment.
Mhm.
She is, and Loopy, I should know this, but yeah, she's a health sciences professor, so she teaches at college.
Oh, absolutely
yeah,
right. That's
in
where
Austin.
I started.
Yep.
Junior college, and
Mhm.
and I love that school because it taught me where to be, where not to be, what I'm interested in, what I'm disinterested in.
Yeah.
It failed so many classes, and I often tell this to students that I worked with when I was working at university. I failed my way to the top of whatever I thought I was getting myself to. I failed on the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't really start over when you fail, you fall. But I tell people you start with experience. You don't start over.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And not to just dive a whole, real deep into education, but community colleges now like she said, do have all the certifications where not degrees, where you may find that you want to be, a sonographer or an electrician or, just something, that doesn't require a college degree, but they've got the training programs for you to do it there.
I absolutely love it when I hear students tell me, I don't think college is for me, but I gave it the try. And I say, well, what's next for you? They say, I don't know. I'm like, well, that just sounds like there's a million doors to open. You're not sure which one yet, but the doors are there as much as you don't see them. And they become like a real estate agent and they love it.
Yeah,
or they
exactly.
Or they get into HVAC and they're good at it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And they come out making pretty good money without all the debt of a 4-year or a postgraduate degree.
Yeah, you're onto something with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Send him a connection request, man. That's what he said.
Yeah, but there's so many individuals that I've had the pleasure to sit down with who say college isn't for me. And I say, okay, cool. What do you think is?
Mm-hmm.
I roll with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you roll with it and people find their way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, you started with kids, is that right? And then moved into adults?
I was lucky enough to start with so the training clinic I was at was in my town.
Okay.
And it was a 3-year full-time master's program, which often master's programs are 2-year full-time.
Mm-hmm.
Mine adds a training element. So it's year 1, all books and reading and studying. Year 2, books and reading. And we get to work in a clinic that's at our university. So if anyone lives in our county, they can drive there for free and sit down with me for free therapy.
Okay.
And then I did that in year 3 when I was one of the managers of the clinic. And so I worked with couples, individuals, kids, individual adults, children, teens, families. So
wow.
yeah. And then from there, I went into an all adult program at the nonprofit that I work for.
Okay. So how nerve-wracking is it to be a student doing those clinicals like that?
I remember my very first session with my very first client. I remember it.
Yeah, I bet you
I remember
do.
the room I was in. Not to mention, in this program, it was intense because cameras were everywhere too. It was a training program where if you go in for free therapy, you sign documents stating that you're allowing a camera to record me and the client so that I can look over the tape and see where I can do better as a therapist. Others can look at it and critique me. It's constant critique. And so it's nerve-wracking on one level when you're face-to-face with someone,
right,
thinking they're going to think, solve me, solve my life. And on top of that, cameras. And we had double glass pane windows so people can spectate and watch you with headphones.
Oh, wow.
Talk about pressure.
Yeah, man. So
Yeah,
do they have like a professor or somebody in there with you, or is it just okay?
Not all the time, but we have it's a supervised clinic, so we had a licensed psychologist, licensed therapist to sometimes watch and supervise us every week. We would get together and admittedly talk about how much we struggle with certain cases. But my very first, to answer your question, my very first session was absolutely nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
I was with a teenager, and I'm like, where do I go with them? I was a teen before I know what they want, right?
Right.
And yeah, when it comes down to it, a lot of therapists are high in neuroticism, meaning they have high feelings that come and emerge out of them to the point that they want to provide good services.
Right.
And there's this thing in our industry, and it's actually in all industries, even the tech industry, imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Pretty well known. You know, someone else should be in this position helping this person. I'm an imposter to this. And therapy, that's number one. That's the number one syndrome that we will all experience. And research shows that it decreases over time. And I suspect that's the case because I feel a lot more comfortable in my therapy shoes. But I enjoy I'm one of the weird ones that enjoys imposter syndrome because it keeps me on my toes to keep progressing.
Yeah.
But that first time, Chris, I felt as if I think I broke this teen. I think I made matters worse.
Worse, right?
I think they came here and told their parents never see this person again.
Right.
Turns out I worked with that person for 2 years.
That's awesome.
2 years, and
yeah, man, that's cool.
Yeah, they flocked. It was really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine, dude. And I like what you said about imposter syndrome keeping you on your toes. That's a good way to look at it. Instead of letting it beat you down, or make you feel bad about yourself or not try or whatever, use it as fuel to get better.
Yeah,
to push yourself.
No, you're right. It's fuel. We can use it to be effective or ineffective. Sometimes I think in ways that are kind of Pollyanna and just things are overly positive, but I'm a realist when it comes to this too, is reframing these negative experiences into something that's going to be helpful for me. Because if imposter syndrome is going to be around the long term for me, I want to use it as a tool.
And learning to recognize it.
Whew, that awareness.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So it was nerve-wracking, like you said.
Yeah, because if you don't know, like I'd never even heard of imposter syndrome until I got on LinkedIn, and I've only been on LinkedIn since January.
Okay.
January. And I had to Google it. I saw somebody post about it, and I had to Google it to figure out what it was. But once you figure out, like I said, once you figure out what it is, okay, it's not just me thinking I'm not worth a flip.
Yeah.
What can I do to improve it? So like you said, that awareness and just learning to recognize, oh my gosh, that's what this is.
Yeah, that awareness, you hit it on the head. And here's something else, and this could be maybe for somebody who's watching. Awareness is one key, using it as fuel is another. And one of the hardest things to do, but I teach it with all my clients, is merely accepting the fact that imposter syndrome is just a part of that process of growth. We evaluate ourselves at every turn. It's human nature. It's innate within us. Children evaluate and look around. They bump their head and they look to a parent or somebody taller to see, should I cry? I'm evaluating this moment. It happens. And so here we are as adults, bumping our heads, looking to our supervisor like, should I cry? And when it's honestly a part of that process. It's starting with experience. You feel as if you're starting over, like, oh gosh, here I go again, and I shouldn't be doing this. And that's a validating feeling. And in addition to that, I can grow and learn from this. I can know that this is a part of this, and everyone else is likely to feel this too. It's not just me. I can accept that it's going to just be dormant there, not to haunt me, but to remind me that it's just there.
Yeah.
I don't need to feed the beast. I can just notice it.
No. And I think it also keeps you humble. You know, like you said, keeps that ego. It would keep that ego in check. It would seem like to me. Okay, I don't have all the answers. But how can I help them find the answers?
Yeah.
You know, like not getting your head this big, that you're this great therapist doing all this good. And, you know, and that's just, I think that's just human nature, is if you're doing something and seeing results, it kind of tends to make you feel good.
Sure. Then we get inside this,
get prideful.
Yeah. We're in this own, what do they call it? An echo chamber. We're in a chamber and we're saying, I'm great. And it echoes back. And, it's like, okay, I'm great because you said it. But really, it's just me stuck in my own position without observing objectively what else is going on. Do others have answers? It's likely so they do, not just me.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So you work for a nonprofit.
Yes.
Tell us how that came about.
While I was in grad school, again, going back to the high neuroticism, all my cohort, and that's what we're called. We were cohorts of individuals, a small class of 16, 17 therapists who go together in 3-year process of graduating. And during our last 6 months is kind of the top of anxiousness that we'll experience, because we have an exit exam. We're finishing 6 months of other classes, and we're being tested on those classes, even though we haven't even taken them yet. Well, that's a doozy. And then we're all trying to figure out who's applying where, who can get what job. Do we even want that position? Do we want to work with that industry? Because after a while, you start learning about particular cultures in different locations in your city, if you decide to stay in California or in our town. So I remember an email went out from one of my mentors saying, hey, this organization is hiring. And so I sent my resume 4 months before I graduated. And I sent it and didn't hear back for a week. Called. They said, well, we're still receiving resumes. We'll get back to you. Call back 2 weeks later, 3 weeks, a month passed by. And I'm like, maybe I should just apply somewhere else. Called one more time. They answered and said, oh, yeah, we got your resume and your CV. And I said, great. I said, has it been reviewed? They said, we're still collecting. I'm like, you're still collecting applications for this? And they were looking for 3 therapists, but it wasn't just me applying. It was multiple therapists in multiple schools, inside and outside of my town. So they were just getting all applications. And then I got a phone call saying, you have a interview next Thursday, and you're going to be meeting with a supervisor in HR. I said, okay, it's a panel interview, 2 people and me. So that's nerve-wracking enough.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, because I still was unsure what part of the industry I was going to flock in.
Right.
So I said, okay. And this particular industry was the industry that individual who posted on Facebook 6 years or 5 years before that, they were working for that industry. And I said, I'm going to work for that place one day. So I had my sights on them. That's why I wasn't so forward in applying in other places.
Right.
My heart was at this culture of this organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so I applied, and then they called me. So I went to the interview, and it was supposed to be a half-hour interview. It turned to be an hour because the supervisor was a supervising therapist and HR, and they just had my resume, my CV, and they were just shooting me questions based on my resume. And, what would you do in this situation? If a client was suicidal, what are your next steps? If you do this, this, and then ask me more about me. And then at the end, they were like, okay, like, are you more interested in working with adults or children? I said, adults. I said, I've worked with kids and teens for all and adults, but let's see what I can do with adults. And they said, okay, we'll call you if, something comes up. So 2 hours later, I'm already back at my university because I was the psychology tutor at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm out there helping students. I get a phone call, and it's HR. And she says, I got some bad news, Jake. And I was like, gosh, like, it's like, how am I going to go back and tutor this student? That's the first thing that's on my mind. If I get bad news,
right.
crying while saying, this is how you teach this. And I can't tutor while I'm crying.
Yeah.
So she said, I got some bad news. And I said, oh gosh. And then she says, just kidding. You got the job.
Boy, that was a cold-blooded move.
It was. And this individual, the HR, they're like the mama bear of the organization. They're humorous, and they already got that vibe from me. So I was hired, within 2 hours after that. And I lost it. I had to walk away. I just was crying, and it was just a wonderful moment. And then I joined the team, and from there learned the nuances of therapy in the real world, outside of school. In real world situations. And so now I've been on the team since oh gosh, June 2019. I've been with the team.
So just over 2 years.
Just over 2 years.
Good deal.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. God had a plan and a purpose. And you said, and you knew, or he put it in your heart that you wanted to work there. Because you said years before, I want to work in that industry. I want to work there.
Yeah, we aim towards what we think, and I was praying a lot and hoping, and I use my own just private time by myself, or when I'm driving, to think like, where do I go next from here, God? And I pray, and I just think if I attempt to put something out there, things happen. If I continue to feed it, things happen, and that's how things are completed. Is putting it out there.
I have no clue what I just hit.
No worries.
I have no idea how that just happened.
Yeah, I was looking. I was like, I wonder if it's going to come back.
Yeah, I have, y'all. I'm sorry. I have no idea what I clicked. I was trying to click on a comment, and it didn't. I don't know what happened. I don't know what I did. That was really weird. I hope the comments start coming back through because they all disappeared. All the LinkedIn comments did. Somebody comment something and see if it'll come through. Gotta love tech, man.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, Julie, the power of the pause.
There it is.
Oh, man. So you've been there for 2 years, working with adults.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so tell us a little bit about like your, what got you started on LinkedIn, your ebook. Just kind of tell us a little bit about that journey and kind of your thought process and your reasons for, because obviously, you're not really going to get any clients off of, I mean, you could get some clients off of LinkedIn if they were in your area or whatever. But just kind of walk us through that.
Sure. So I've had a LinkedIn for years. And while I was in school, people had said, get a LinkedIn. I'm like, why? I'm just in school, and they're like, it's really good for professionalism. I said, okay. And I got it, and I had a blank picture for years. as my profile.
Yeah, the little gray ghost dude.
Yeah, I was a gray ghost for a few years.
Yeah.
And then after a while, I went on there, and there's like this send all to all potential connections that would to your university. So I did that to like develop some sort of connections, but
Mm-hmm.
I was connecting with people that I didn't necessarily have full on dialogues with.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I guess you could say, like, I don't know, 6 degrees of difference and separation. I wasn't that close to a lot of these individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So then this year, I was on LinkedIn a lot more around April, and I saw some individuals just post about what they do in their day to day, and I just saw all the comments of just good in-depth dialogue,
Yes.
and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I'd wonder if there's mental health in-depth dialogues public on here too, because I'm involved with a lot of conversations on more privatized areas like Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
But on LinkedIn, I said, I'd wonder if the more dialogue comes up on here, if I could, inadvertently also like destigmatize what individuals are often refraining from talking about.
Right.
And so I just did a post here and there, and I was also working from home too.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was a big change.
Mm-hmm.
And so LinkedIn was a good way to connect with a lot of professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw more people developing their own like hashtagging groups, so
Yep.
that if more people want to continue having these in-depth conversations, they know where to go because they're familiar
Right.
with a certain name. And I said, that's fantastic. So then I made a hashtag,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just grew from there, where now I just get DMs and conversations about mental health. And it's funny you bring up not getting clients per se. That's what happens a lot.
Really?
Yes. So
And,
what?
well, I guess if you were working from home, were you meeting with your clients like over Zoom or something?
It was a hybrid. I was working
Okay.
from home, and there were certain instances where I would actually travel to the client.
Okay.
But a lot were through Zoom or through telephone, just a phone
Okay.
call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as that came out of my mouth, it occurred to me a lot of people are doing virtual stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
So that could open up the doors for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was posting on LinkedIn, my intention was to never find work.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started posting, because I had a blog and I would post there consistently about mental health, but I wanted to share it more on LinkedIn, a couple of really kind individuals from my community DM'd me, a few supervisors, saying, I have a position open if you'd be interested. And I said, I'm not looking for work.
Right.
And it's not uncommon that I still get DMs sometimes from locations in my county or in California,
Mm-hmm.
which is really fascinating. Because there's like this little thing on LinkedIn where you can click interested or not interested in finding work.
Right.
Mine's always just been not interested because I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
But then over posting since April, I'll get DMs from individuals who want me to privately coach them through something, not necessarily therapy, but it's coaching, like how to help develop the skills to get through something that's happening in the present or something they want in the future.
Right.
And therapy is more so, how can I pull up difficult things from the past to help you get through your present? And so there's a lot of regulations when it comes to therapy. Like I can only provide therapy with anyone in California as long as 2 things happen. 1, they're living in California, and 2, I'm licensed. And I'm not licensed yet. I'm on my way to being licensed.
Okay.
Yeah. You need like 3,000 hours of working with people before you get licensed.
Mm-hmm.
But with coaching, if someone from, I don't know, Antarctica were to call me or email me and say, hey, could you be my coach? I could technically say yes, because coaching is much less regulated than California State Board of Behavioral Sciences.
Is there any kind of, like being in California, is there any kind of license for coaching, or is it just
It's more so like if you were to get like business license or an LLC to
Okay.
like cover yourself in court. Yeah, you
Right.
probably need something in California, but there are coaching organizations like
Right.
International, I think Federation of Coaching, I think is one, but I've never been interested in performing something,
Right.
doing something like that
Right.
because I feel I have some knowledge from my own training.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it
Yeah.
kind of allows you to be a therapist without that label, I
Mhm.
guess. I mean, because it's almost the same thing. You're just kind of finding what's inside the person and pulling it out and helping them get clarity,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
That's
So
pretty cool.
yeah, so it's been a blessing that people would kindly DM me and say, "Hey, I live in California. Could you be my therapist?" And I say, "It's very kind of you. I'm not licensed, um, or I don't have like my LLC. However, I can refer you to so and so."
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I will definitely attempt to continue doing is
Mm-hmm.
referring people or encouraging them to look. I'll teach them what's in their state. Like I'll often suggest, and this is probably really good for maybe someone out there looking for therapy who maybe are on a serious budget,
Mm-hmm.
is look for like a local university or college in your state. It's likely in all 50 states there's big universities well known, and they're likely to have a therapy or social work program that provide low cost or free Zoom appointments, so you don't have to travel to the college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like my program, it's through Bakersfield, California at California State University.
Mm-hmm.
They offered free Zoom couple individual therapy adolescent appointments through Zoom last summer. For 3 or 4 months, they were providing that to anybody who, as long as you lived in California.
Yeah.
Um, and then USC, they have a doctorate of social work program or social work program where I believe they offer low cost or free Zoom appointment therapy too with their social workers who are wanting to become like social
Okay.
workers. They do partial therapy too. So
Gotcha.
so I tell people look for a university. If there's one in town, see if they have a training clinic. That's what they're called,
Mm-hmm.
and see what the requirements are. And some of them are low cost, some of them are free, a lot of them are nonprofit. So
And you can do
uh,
it from your phone.
yeah, I've done a
Yeah.
lot of therapy
Yeah.
from my phone to someone else's phone.
Yeah. That is amazing, dude. I didn't even realize that existed. So let me ask you this. You mentioned not being able to be someone's therapist without being licensed. I
Mhm.
guess the way you're able to do it now is by working under a licensed therapist
That's
or at
it.
the clinic. Okay. Just to get
That's
your
it.
hours in and
Yeah. And
gotcha.
so a lot of individuals do that because there's a discussion of a culture in our industry where a lot of therapists burn out very quickly due to high caseloads, due
Mm-hmm.
to the immense amount of notes,
Mm-hmm.
due to negative interactions with um, anybody really. It could be with supervisors, it could be with clients, it could be with colleagues. But more often than not, you will have a supervisor who's licensed so that you
Right.
can see your clients through the week. And then during that week, you have one or two sit downs with your supervisor or your group of colleagues to discuss the nuances and difficulties of working with your clients so that
Mm-hmm.
they can help guide you as you guide your client.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you
On
need
the
that supervision to make
right.
kind of like what we were talking about, getting out of that ego bubble or getting out
Mm-hmm.
of that I can only help me bubble. It breaks that so that you can have more clinical guidance and opinions from others who might see something that you might be missing.
Right.
Yeah,
So just because you're through a school doesn't mean you're through with the training.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
In this position, they say that you're a lifelong learner.
I
I
can
suppose
imagine.
I suppose that's applicable to a lot of industries, but in this industry, it's you work with I like it because I get to work with whatever walks through the door and whoever's willing to also work with me too, because they have
Mm-hmm.
choice if they even want to work with me as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you handle, like you hear, I'm sure you hear a lot of negative stuff and just see a lot of people going through heart-wrenching things or have had heart-wrenching things happen to them or
Mhm.
whatever. How do you keep it from just bringing you all the way down all the time?
That's a good question. I was just in a conversation with someone at Target the other day who I was buying like gift supplies for my wife for her birthday, and he saw my name tag and he says, he's like, "What do you do?" I said, "Oh, I'm a clinical therapist." And he's like, "Wow, I've always wanted to do that, but I became an engineer instead." I'm like, "That's such a starking difference."
Yeah, right.
I said, "I don't even know where to go from there." I laughed, and then he laughed, and I said, "Why is that?" And he said, I wouldn't be able to separate that from work and then home." I heard a lot about that with my colleagues, mainly what people I trained with, that it's hard to separate the two because we're human. We connect, but
and if you've got any level of empathy in you at all, you know, you're going to want that. I'm very empathetic. Like I feel with people on a deep level whenever they're going through something. It would be hard for me to be a therapist.
Sure.
That's what made me ask that question is if any person has any kind of empathy in them at all, how do you not take that home?
Yeah. I think everyone talks about that word compartmentalization. How can I take this and put it in this compartment and this and this? And how do I take my love life in this compartment and my entertainment life in this compartment? And I think it's constantly practicing that while asking yourself, am I doing okay today? Because there are times where I'll find myself rushing to different appointments or trying to rush my own supervisor when I need to constantly ask myself, why is it that you're rushing? Oh, it's because I overbooked. And once I'm aware, it's fascinating. That awareness slows you down. It makes you present. Anxiousness and depression deplete when you are more present. You're more aligned with what's most important and what's most in your control. And so by me leaving my job, I again try to emulate that chessboard, that gaming board I told you about. That if I keep my hands off this while help guiding them, I'm still going to be empathetic. And when I leave, we're going to leave the game pieces, and they may move their game pieces as we're outside of therapy. And so I just keep thinking that they're doing well enough. They're still showing up, and that if I were to take whatever is happening home with me, I'm not being an effective therapist because I'm not taking as care of myself as I can, because then I'm not being present at home.
Right.
And so the goal is to have a life outside of that. And when you have a life outside of that, you don't have to meander back and forth thinking like, what do I do? I'm worried about work, versus having a life. And when you're present with that life, everything else seems to stand still.
Yeah.
Yeah. So being present, being aware if you need to slow down, being aware of if you are starting to see warning signs of burning out, being aware that if you're not having fun in your life, being aware if you're not being intimate with people in your life, connecting is that source of recharging.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So having that life outside of that.
Yeah.
I was talking with you earlier that I'm one of the weird ones. I call myself weird in a really good way, where I talk about mental health at work and at night.
Yeah.
Like when I'm on LinkedIn, or when I'm like scripting out a YouTube video, or when I'm thinking about a book that I actually want to complete, like going back to that ebook. I just am infatuated with human progress and performance.
Yeah.
And so my clients energize me when they talk about what they want to progress in. We help get them there. And then when I come home, I don't necessarily take their stuff with me. I take what I get out of it, I think, and try to meander and find my way through that. It helps me be present. And it doesn't mean I don't think about my clients. They pop up in my mind because I'm reminded, and I tell them, I was thinking about you the other day, but it's not to the point where I was thinking about all your emotions, and I was holding on to your secrets, and I was holding on to your pain. And that's me taking too much responsibility for them. And that's unfair for myself and for them. Yeah.
So I just pulled up your YouTube channel. Therapy with Jake. Imagine that. I just Googled, I put in therapy with
I
Jake.
literally changed the name of that as I started getting more comfortable with that hashtag. It used to just be my full name, Jacob Kountz. And during COVID, I wanted to just post mental health videos. And so I did it for a short period of time, and I'm excited. Oh, thank you for the plug. That was really kind of you.
Yeah, that's why I went real quick. I was going to say, I'll put the link in the comments, guys, if y'all want to go subscribe to his YouTube channel and check him out.
All 15 subscribers, baby.
So look, let me ask you this. It's totally unrelated to mental health, but I noticed it. I thought you had to have 100 subscribers before you could do a custom URL.
Oh,
how did you do that?
I don't know. If I got that at random, then maybe it was by accident. I don't know.
Wow. You beat
maybe
the
I Googled
algorithm.
it.
Yeah, you beat the algorithm somehow.
Maybe I asked Jeeves. I don't know.
Are we still asking Jeeves things?
I don't know. I moved on to Bing, then Google.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to figure that out.
If I ever find out, I'll shoot you a tutorial.
Yeah. So yeah, go check out his YouTube channel. There's a lot of videos up on there.
Yeah. Last time I posted maybe 4 or 5 months ago. I was doing a friendship series of how to, just little things that you can do to develop a friend.
I see that. Yep.
Yeah. I felt it was pertinent, especially during COVID, where it's difficult to even think, how can I make a friend while attempting to be isolated, while struggling with my feelings of being isolated.
I love that you have most of them fairly short too, so they grab your attention and then you don't lose their attention.
Sure. Yeah,
that's great. I love that. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So I forgot what I was going to ask you before I went looking for your YouTube channel and totally lost all train of thought. I hate it when that happens. Oh, and I did notice too, I was going to ask you, but I noticed a lot of your posts are at night on LinkedIn. Do you do that on purpose? Is it just because you're off work and at home? And
at first it was like that, where I would get home and think like, what could I share tonight? And I'll think about my day and I'm like, there it is. And I'll type it out. And that was getting too stressful because I wasn't able to articulate as well as I could. And so I use like Saturday and Sunday to write out 5 or 6 different posts for between like 6 and 7 is when I post, because I'm normally off of work before that, come home, enjoy my time, like spending time with my wife, enjoying some laughter.
Sure.
And then I'll like, hey, give me a moment and I'll post what I already have created and then go back to that. So predominantly I do that. And sometimes then I'll do my gratitude post, which I've just started doing during the midday around lunchtime. And that one is just, I'm just trying to add a little bit more to my routine and practice working on my own level of consistency.
So speaking of consistency, since this will be a good segue into the ebook.
That's right.
Since that's what we were talking about earlier.
That was smooth, Chris. So earlier,
you'd almost thought that was scripted.
You have a big sign over your mind that says "Talk about ebook."
Actually, I did write it down. I never write anything down. I wrote that down.
Beautiful. So yeah, in the pre-show, Chris and I were talking about this ebook that I wrote, and it's free. So if you don't have it, just DM me. I'll send it to you either today or tomorrow, depending on how many DMs there are. And I wrote an ebook after I struggled for a long time with idolizing what it would be to even write a book. I had an interest to write a book, and I've started, I think I shared 8 or 9 different books, and I would stop, like the motivation would just dwindle and it wouldn't be there anymore.
Right.
And inspiration's there and that gets the ball rolling, but how do you keep pushing that ball as it gets heavier? You know, it's consistency. And one of the tech and the ebook is 5 kind of like gold standard techniques that I've used, and also a lot of research has shown to help get the ball rolling when it comes to motivation and even just getting things done. That's what a lot of this is about, is things we're interested in, completing them and finding meaning in them.
Right.
At least from what I can tell. So when I wrote this ebook, one of the techniques was in there was staying consistent. And in order to do that, it means evaluating where you're at, breaking things down, you know, in bite-sized pieces. And then I even put in there that an example of this is me completing this book. I've tried to complete, 6, 7, 8, 9 books, larger projects, and it just wasn't working. It's because I didn't take that giant picture and put it into bite-sized pieces. I did that for school. I did that for a lot of other activities. But when it comes to something that doesn't have necessarily a deadline that's required, that's when it becomes, that's when you become your own cheerleader to give yourself those deadlines to complete something. And so I had to do a lot of that with this book. And so it was a prize to share with some of my friends and colleagues and people on LinkedIn, but it was more of a prize for me because it was personal.
Yeah.
Because I was very proud when I finished all 13 of those pages.
Yeah.
And just shared that because I want to use that as a way to then complete larger projects.
Right.
Yeah. So it's my goal is to help motivate and inspire individuals who feel stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, you proved to yourself that you can do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So 12, 13 chapters or pages. Let's just call it one chapter. You can write a full chapter now.
Yeah.
So what's stopping you from sitting down and writing one chapter at a time? Because now you can do it. You finish stuff. Plus, and there's the discouragement of maybe you got a chapter or 2 or 5 written in those other books, but you didn't complete the book. This was meant to be exactly what it is. So you can write a chapter. You can complete something.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of a two-edged sword there. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I was completing little objectives until I was done with the goal. And then, and those are all the little steps. It's there's this, I think it's a metaphor. I'm terrible when it comes to similes, metaphors.
Yeah. And analogies. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So
what is that?
I box them up together and I say, I'll call it a day. I'll ask Jeeves later. And
right. Jeeves feller.
Yeah,
he's kind of like he knows it all.
If someone doesn't know who Ask Jeeves is, just Google Ask Jeeves. That's hilarious. So what I did was, I broke it down into objectives and finished it, and that tells me that I can get to the next portion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Cool, man. Well, dude, I don't know what happened. Either my LinkedIn is messing up or everybody bailed on us. We still got one person watching somewhere, though, on YouTube or Twitch.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I know. I will, too. I'm happy with it, man. We had a good crowd tonight. Was there anything else we wanted to talk about or cover that you wanted people to know about you?
Oh, sure. Well, what I was thinking on here, because I shared earlier on the when I was sharing about this, that I suspect we're going to talk about, life, therapy, anything in between. And I was on one podcast before, and it was open-ended like this, where we just, talked about different things and life of a therapist and their life too. And I shared on there, and I'll share on here that if anyone's, ever struggling or is concerned or is wondering who therapy is for, I'm often asked that question. I say, well, I do a catch-all. It's for anyone interested in attempting to stretch themselves a little bit in a certain way. I was a lot different than some of my associates in grad school, where a lot of them experienced therapy growing up. I did not. I was just in sports growing up, kind of in my own world. And when I got into grad school, they shared with us that some of the most prolific therapists go to therapy themselves. And I said, wow, really? So first I can't give advice, and now I'm forced to go to therapy. Yeah. And then from there, I
rocked your poor little old boat, man.
Oh yeah. So I said, I'll give this a try. I said, well, if I'm going to be speaking on this for probably a good portion of my life, why not continue to try? And I'm going to go. So I remember when I sat down, I felt like I had the most honest conversation with, a stranger. And I did that for 6 months, and it was well worth it. And I remember when I sat down, they said, what are you here for? And I said, I have no idea. And that's what I get when I work with my clients. And so it's nice to see when they come in, they're like, sometimes they may not even know why they're here. They just feel like they're dwindling. And
Yeah.
there's no definition. They're stuck,
Yeah.
not really sure where to go. And I said, that's okay. I said, let's be stuck together and we'll find our way.
Yeah.
And I try to just promote therapy and mental health for all different individuals, couples, individuals. I tell people, bring your cousin in and bring your pastor in, and people come to support them, to support the relationship. And I work with couples too. And sometimes men and women come in, they're like, oh my gosh, I thought you were going to give me a lecture. And it was much different than that. They find healing in their relationship. Or maybe there was no healing that needed to be done. Maybe they needed a check-in, like a car getting checked in for its oil. It's not a bad idea. Yeah.
Maybe you really didn't have any problems. Maybe it was just something was stuck.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And the light bulb goes off.
Yeah, it's not surprising when I sit down with individuals who share with me, I didn't think therapy was going to be like this, and I think I figured out what I need to do next. And from there, they'll go into like a coaching group, or they'll get coached by someone, or they're in therapy with me once every few months.
Right.
Or they'll check in by phone, or they'll say, I feel like I'm doing better. And I said, all right, you ready to fire me? Like, that's the goal here.
Yeah.
It's always a running joke I have with my clients. I say, when are you ready to fire me? Because that's the good news.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I bet sitting on the opposite end of it, especially having never gone through it, was good for you as a therapist.
Yeah, because it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and so to know it, put yourself in their shoes, you know what they're going through, you know how nervous they are, you can say you've walked a mile in their shoes to an extent.
Yeah.
Because you know about how uncomfortable this is for them to go in there and talk to a perfect stranger about deep, intimate details of their life.
Yeah, because it's pretty common when I'm hit with someone sharing with me, how could you help me? You've never experienced this before. And I think you're right. I haven't, but if that were the case, I would have to experience anything and everything my clients had experienced in order to meet that standard.
Yeah.
And if you give me 15, 20 minutes of your time and see if this can work out, then we can move forward. But you can also not work with me either, and that's a choice too. And I've learned that even in my own, when I was going to therapy, about moments where I'm like, do I even want to go? Am I getting anything out of this? How can I challenge myself with this? What am I not unveiling that could be a benefit for me? How can my vulnerability be a good thing for me? So asking those questions help lead me to my own personal healing. And so I give that space, and I give silence in the room for my clients who want to ask those questions. How can this even help me? And I try to help them find their answer. I may not have that answer, but we can work our way up to it. And that's the beauty of this industry.
Yeah. And it's not, and you've kind of just dispelled that myth or whatever, that it's not you telling them what to do or how to do it. It's getting there with them together.
Oh my gosh.
Because they don't know and you don't know, but you kind of know how to help them pull it out. So y'all are a team.
Yeah, it really is. It's a team dynamic. It's going back to that game board. If I see what pieces they want to move, I'll say, how do you think that's going to help you? What can we do to make it easier? What's going to happen if you don't move it? And I have these questions, and I try to just nudge little by little so that they can one day move their hand and say, I can't believe I moved this piece. I can't believe I did that. And that's the coolest thing ever. I tell my supervisor, it's like I'm living 10,000 lives in a day when I work and sit down with people.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. So that's just a testament that if anyone's out there curious, look into local resources, type in mental health and type in your city. It's likely that your county, wherever you live, it has an organization or a nonprofit nearby, and you can get assessed, you can get help. even if you feel things aren't as significantly terrible as they could be, but you're still curious about if there's any pitfalls or anything that you might be missing, it's well worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many reasons that people go into therapy and mental health, and I still hear new reasons every week.
Yeah, I bet. And I bet you will continue to do that for as long as you're practicing.
Yeah. Yeah. I still can't believe it. I tell my supervisor, I'm like, why do you pay me again? And
Yeah.
they just laugh and they're just like, well, it's like we get the job done, we keep going, and good client care, and I grow and they grow, and it's a mutual experience.
Mm-hmm. Right
Yeah.
on, man. Well, dude, we are at our hour.
Okay.
Man, I appreciate you being here. I've learned a lot. Like you just totally shifted the way I look at therapists. Not that I had anything against them, but just what it really is all about. And I enjoyed this, man. I had a lot of fun.
I did too. I was excited. I'm excited for more questions, but I want to keep you at your hour.
Yeah.
It's funny. For my job, I ask questions, and here I am like, give me more questions. Yeah.
Right.
I find it really enjoyable. Like
Yeah.
I really appreciate your interview style.
Yeah, man. And I like to keep it like I don't write because I would be terrible about it. And I say this about every other live I do. If I wrote down questions, I would stick to those questions and then I'd be done in 15 minutes. You know what I mean? If I have a script to follow, I really enjoy. I think that's why I like these lives so much is I treat them almost as a networking Zoom call with someone. Just have a conversation and get to know you. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I love it. Like I have a lot of fun doing it. That's
awesome. I can really see it. I saw that, you had your questions in your mind and you're like, what was it going to ask? But then it just kept going. Mm-hmm. If you don't talk, I will. If I don't talk, you will.
And I say that at least once per show. Dadgummit, I had a question. I'm going to learn one day to write it down when it pops in my head. And I never do.
Be your second hashtag. You make hashtag #DoneGone, I had a question.
I'm going to start using that on all my live promo posts. Dadgummit, I had a question.
Well, thank you again. Awesome, it was really nice to have this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed it. And I know everyone else did too. Yeah. Cool, man. All right. If anybody is left still watching, there's a couple people. Appreciate y'all for coming by. Thanks again for always supporting the show and just kind of, hanging out with me. I enjoy it. And I will see y'all next week. Bye, y'all.
Take care.